Hey, hello and welcome to the Parsha class. Parshiot Tazria-Metzora, very often read together. They are read together this year as well. It's a double Parsha. Beautiful. We have the punishment of Tzarat, and we have its cure in the next Parsha in Metzora. And it's a beautiful thing. And uh, we'll see our theme of running theme here in Taam Dagan of learning lessons about food and ethics related to food and nutrition. Sorry, excuse me, nutrition and health and these sorts of things. We'll see how this has to do with any of that, if anything at all. And I'm sure you've already guessed. There's probably going to be plenty. The last week's parsha. Um, was Shmini. A lot of the basics of kosher food were found there. In Parshat Tazria, less so, right? Right away, where we start talking about the delivery and birth of babies, baby boys, baby girls. So the Parsha begins with chapter 12, well, verse 2 for our purposes. The Beral B'nai Israel, Hashem tells Moshe to speak to the Jewish people, Lemor, saying, Isha ki tazria, a woman when she gives birth, when she delivers, v'yalda zachar, and she bears a yaled, a boy, tamna shivat yamim, she is tamat shivat yamim, she is impure, she is tameh. Difficult word to translate. We usually translate it as impure, but as we saw even as recently as last class in Shmini, that indeed um, it means much more than that. It means some sort of separation from life, from holiness, and so that's what a woman is. As soon as she gives birth, she loses some part of life from within her, so she is impure for 7 days. Kime nidat dota titma. She is impure as she would be during her period of being a nidav, having her menses. The commentary says, Tom Dagan, we have, just like in creation, man chronologically follows animals. Should be follows, not follow. Man would be follow. But man chronologically follows animals to show man's supremacy. We're going upwards. So to hear the laws of purity of man follow the laws of purity of animals. So we just had, like I said in Parshat Shemini, the laws of kashrut. There's other reasons as well for that. But right away, the next subject is the laws of the holiness of humans. Based on the fact that a chaya can also mean pregnant woman, this verse may be hinting to advice of the sages in the Gemara Yoma 82a to whisper, um, second, to whisper in a pregnant woman's ear that today is Yom Kippur if she's feeling very hungry on that day. It's a little bit slower than I expected. Just a moment. Huh. Huh. Curious. Okay. Beautiful. All right. And there it explains that that when a woman listens, well, sorry, there it explains. There it gives the example. I see. I was trying to fix something and didn't finish fixing it. There it gives the example that when a particular woman uh, listened, her child grew up to be Rabbi Yochanan. I misspelled everything there today. Well, sorry. Hope that's not endemic here. And elsewhere, where another woman did not listen, he became, her child became, her child grew up. to be um that's not his name. Avuya, right? Elisha ben Avuya, right? Elisha, not that spelling. Elisha ben Avuya, who became a heretic in life. So by performing this procedure, we can help. Uh, Performing this procedure can help. I apologize. Here we go. Let's fix this properly. Performing this procedure can help us determine. We're gonna have to read this all over again. I apologize. Whether it's a sign that the future child will be a positive uh, or negative or impure. I see. I see what I was trying to write, and I do apologize. We, I guess I wasn't as ready for this class as I thought I was. Give me a quick moment here. We'll have this up and running in no time. God willing. Okay. Okay. Let's try this again. Based on the fact that a chaya can also mean a pregnant woman, this verse may be hinting, according to the Vilna Gaon, to advice of the sages in the Talmud and Yoma to whisper in a pregnant woman's ear that today is Yom Kippur if she's feeling hungry or very hungry on that holy day. There it gives the example that when one woman listened and refrained from eating, I should say, right? That's what it means by listened. Her child grew up to be Rabbi Yochanan, and elsewhere, where another woman did not listen, her child grew up to be Elisha ben Avuya, who became a heretical leader in his lifetime. Performing this procedure can help us determine whether it's a sign that the future child will be positive and quote unquote pure or negative or impure. As the verse says here, again, back to our verse, that when she bears a male, she will be impure for 7 days. That's the impurity we might be talking about. In other words, how good they're going to be in their future. All right, let's go on from there. Next verse, chapter 12, verse 3. Uvayom hashmini yimol basar olato. And on the eighth day, the flesh of his foreskin will be circumcised. Turnus Rufus asked Rabbi Akiva, why do Jews perform circumcisions? Rabbi Akiva brings him wheat and cakes and says, these, in other words, the wheat, are made by the Almighty, and these, in other words, the cakes, are made by man. Are not these cakes better than the wheat? What do you want to eat right now? Wheat, or do you want to eat cake? So wheat was made by Hashem. It's natural, right? Uh, Good. All right. So so obviously, our job in this world is to accept things, even food, as imperfect, in order to perfect them. That is our goal. We take things, we take the natural world, and we fix it. So same thing with wheat being turned into cake. Same thing with our bodies born with the foreskin being turned into kadosh, into something holy with the Brit Milah. So that was his analogy. And again, the connection to food is obvious, right? So wheat is that could be our food. So why do we make bread out of it? Because that's better for us. But actually, where it helps us digest the food better and get the most nutrients out of it. Cooking is perhaps unnatural, but it's an unnatural thing that Hashem wants us to do, just like Ibrit Milah. All right, next verse, chapter 12, verse 4. Shloshim yom shloshet yamim, and for 3 and 30 days, Teshev b'dmei tahara, she shall sit in the blood of her purity. B'chol kodesh lo tiga, she shall not touch anything sanctified, anything holy. Ve'el hakodesh lo tavo, and she will not go into the holy. In other words, not go into the sanctuary, into the temple. Ad melot yimei tahara, until the days of her purification are finished. So after 33 days, with the birth of a boy, she's able to go into the holy and touch holy things, etc. Now, what does that have to do with food? Very, very simple. Amongst other things, Rashi brings from the Gemara in Yevamot 75a that when she is impure, what does that mean? That means she's not allowed to eat or offer truma while she's impure. In other words, if she lives in a house of a Kohen, if she's the wife of a Kohen, say, or the daughter, let's stick with wife of a Kohen, then she's able to eat truma, and when she is impure like this, after she has a baby, she does not eat truma. Now you might think that doesn't sound fair. She did this holy thing of having a child. What could be holier than that? One of the greatest miracles that everybody experiences. Even atheists have to admit how miraculous birth is. So why isn't she allowed to eat truma? Why is she impure after birth? So Sforno answers a beautiful answer, and that is immediately after birth and for some time later, a mother is naturally concerned with what? With her own and her baby's physical needs. She's thinking about the physical. What does the baby need to eat? When does the baby need to be changed? What's happening with my body? Why does this hurt? Why is that not working anymore? Or whatever it is. Or when is this going to produce milk? Or all the things that happen after birth that a woman is focusing on are physical things. As such, her mind cannot focus on more spiritual and sacred matters, so she should not be involved in temple issues and in temple items. That's a beautiful sforno there. But says Rabbi Moshe Sternbach in Taam V'dat, even more than that. How about us? For us also, when our minds are on physical things and our physical needs, it is not appropriate for us to be involved in spiritual matters. If all you're thinking about is food, 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 sleep, 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 enjoyment, 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 so you're not focusing on your connection with Hashem. You're not bringing that up with you into your connection with Hashem. It reminds me, and it's not in the book, but it reminds me of the Mishnah, Pirkei Avot, which we're supposed to be studying nowadays in the Shabbat afternoons. So Pirkei Avot, it says if you're studying and you get distracted and you say, wow, what a beautiful tree I see. So the Mishnah says the person is chayv b'nafsho. Person is really worthy of the death penalty for something like that. Worthy of the death penalty because he saw a beautiful tree, because he stopped learning for a minute. Let's go back to learning. So some of the commentaries explain that's not the issue. The issue is when this person sees this beautiful tree, this person is distracted from the fact that the Torah and the tree come from the same source. If you can't see that connection, that the author of the Torah, Hashem himself, is the creator of that tree that you think is beautiful, then you've got something going on that's not in how we're supposed to think about things. And that is a serious problem. That's a serious spiritual problem indeed. Next chapter, we're going to skip a chapter to chapter 13. And here's where we get most of the laws of somebody who becomes a Metzora, somebody who gets tzara'at. So chapter 13, verse 2 says, Adam kiyeh be'or b'saro se'et o sapachat o baheret, haya be'or b'saro l'nega tzarat, v'huva el Aaron HaKohen, o el echad mibanav HaKohanim. So when a person has in the skin of his flesh a there's different translations, but we'll go with this classic translation here. A rising, a scab, a bright spot, right? So he's got something on the skin, and it becomes in the skin of his flesh the illness of tzarat, usually translated as leprosy. Then he's going to be brought to Aaron the Kohen or to one of his sons, the Kohanim. The illnesses that make a person impure are due to spiritual errors. This is based on the Gemara in Arachin. Not due to eating and drinking, right? This isn't the normal kind of illness. This is Forno again. The normal kind of illnesses that we know nowadays have a lot to do with diet, have a lot to do with what we eat, what we don't eat. Oh, you need more vitamin E. Oh, you're sick with that because you don't have vitamin C. And so whatever it is, you need to go out in the sun and get some vitamin D. Whatever it is that people are ill from, it's usually a lot of it comes from eating and drinking. Alcohol, of course, damages the liver and all kinds of other illnesses. We spoke about that last week with the first rule the Kohanim received after the death of Nadav and Avihu. The illness of tzarat, though, follows the laws of kosher animals in the previous parsha. We were just learning about kosher animals before, as we mentioned before, because most people are careful about what they put in their mouths, says Rav Yisrael Salanter, but not as careful about what comes out of their mouths. So you have to be worried about, and this is one of, we know that Lashon Hara, again, according to that Gemara in Arachin 16a, it's Lashon Hara is one of the reasons to get tzarat. And here you have an example right here of this illness that happens because of what comes out of your mouth. Some people are very careful to keep kosher and be careful about what goes into their mouths. But you also have to be careful not to get tzarat from what comes out of your mouth. Therefore, the Torah immediately warns us the evil words are so serious they can cause physical illness. Next verse for us. One moment. Let's fix that. Okay. And the Kohen, so chapter 13, verse 5. The Kohen is going to look. But Yom HaShvi, and the seventh day, this person was in quarantine for seven days to see what would happen to this sapachat or whatever, all these different maladies on his skin. V'hine hanaga amad be'inav. If the illness remains in his eyes or remains in its appearance, we're going to look at those words a little more carefully in just a moment. Lo pasah hanega ba'or. Then the illness has not spread in the skin. It's just it's still there, right? What the pimple or whatever is still on that part of the skin and hasn't moved. He's gira hakohen shivat yamim shenit. So it's still there and hasn't gotten smaller, hasn't moved. Nothing's been happening. So that doesn't mean he's cured. So the Kohen has to quarantine him for another 7 days. Now, after the 14 days of quarantine, if the suspected skin illness seems to, as we say, amad be'inav, right, or stand in the Kohen's eyes, which we translated as remain the same, the person is considered to not have tzarat. But if this phrase means that there's no change again, which is how we've been translating it, right, there's no change, why does the pasuk use such a strange phrase? So based on several places in the Talmud, the Ramban explains that the Kohen does not have to actually measure the discoloration with a ruler. He should visually estimate. He's not going to go up and see like that. So Amad Be'inav, it stands in his eyes. It means it literally stood the same way in his eyes. in his estimation without using a ruler. His eyes were the ruler. This is a chidush of mine, so you can take it or leave it. It's up to you. But a similar concept in halacha today is called tvias ayin, or familiar eye. For instance, according to the OU, or at least this used to be the case. I don't know if that's the case now. I haven't looked about the current policy. Although you usually need to see the scales of a piece of fish in the store to determine if it is kosher, salmon's unique pink color, called salmon by the way, distinguishes it from other types of fish, and you can buy it even without seeing the scales. Who says this? Igor Smosha, Yeridea. Besides, after years of experience, a Kohen. So again, how do you know it's salmon? Because you know it's salmon because it looks like it in your eyes. Your eyes mean something. So the Kohen's eyes mean something. He's seen this thing. It hasn't changed. He didn't measure it. It's not an exact science. It's maybe even a little subjective on the part of the Kohen. You have to be careful which Kohen you choose when you go and get this estimated. Besides, after years of experience, a Kohen becomes expert in determining the status of the potential affliction, and an expert voice is often trusted over the opinions of laypersons. So we've got this Kohen, and now he's seen this, and now he measures it, he kind of memorizes it, and then he goes and sees something else that's similar somewhere else, and he memorizes that, and that's how he becomes an expert. That's how he has the shimush to be able to know when and where to determine if somebody has tzara'at. Okay, that was Parsha Tazria. We move on to Parsha Metzora, and we see chapter 14, verse 4. V'tzivah hakohen v'lakach lemitaher shtei tziparim chayot k'torot ve'etz erez u'shni tolad ve'ezov. So there's a whole procedure that somebody who is leaving the status of being a tzarua, a metzora now, somebody getting out of tzarat, there's a whole procedure that he has to go through in order to become pure. He brings, as we'll see, the Kohen takes from him two live birds, a tor or b'nei Yonah, right, and some cedar wood and scarlet and hyssop. And all of these symbolize different things. And according to Rashi, again, a lot of them have to do with Lashon Hara and the other sins that cause, and the misbehaviors that cause this illness of Tzarat. The birds used for a Metzora sacrifice had to be kosher. In fact, all kosher birds fit the limitations set by the Mishnah of the type of birds that should be used for a Metzora's ceremony. This is the Mishnah in Nagayim 14:1. So it doesn't have to be necessarily, I guess it didn't have to be Tur or B'nai Yonah. Okay. I think limitation is probably not the right words. I think I'm probably looking for qualifications. Okay. Okay. Chapter 14, verse 7. And 14, verse 7. And amongst other things that the Kohen does, it says, Vihiza al hametaher min hatzarat sheva pamim. He sprinkles from this blood, cedar, hyssop mixture. He sprinkles on this person who had tzarat 7 times. Viti haru, and he becomes purified that way. Vishalach et hatzipor hachaya al pnei hasadeh. And there were 2 birds. One was sheched, and one was left to be alive. This living bird he now allows to fly out into the open field. Now, what does that have to do with anything related to food? The answer is, after the bird is sent off, one who later catches it may eat it, says the Gemara in Kiddushin 57a and the Ramban So you're allowed to eat this bird. It's not like it's a part of a sacrifice, so you have to leave it alone. It's not marked in any way. You don't know that it's as long as it's a kosher bird, you don't know that it was used in the ceremony. So you can eat it. However, the bird that was supposed to be slaughtered after the Metzora ceremony is considered disgusting to eat. So even though it was slaughtered, even though uh, it's uh, it's ritually being used, that doesn't mean that it's edible. According to again the Ramban, actually on Devarim 14:2. So there he says that this bird is considered disgusting. Um, Okay, chapter 14, verse 20. V'he'alah hakohen et ha'olah v'et ha'mincha ha'mizbecha v'chiper alav hakohen v'taher. The Kohen shall offer the burnt offering and the meal offering upon the mizbeach, and the Kohen shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. Hashem in his Torah says the Metzora is toher, pure, 3 times here. The final instance meaning that the person purified from tzara may now eat kachim. So the same idea is the same idea of the kachim that we had earlier, the truma that the woman was impure to eat after having a baby. So the same thing here. The Metzora, one of the areas that we want to purify him for is that he'll be pure enough to eat from holy objects. It could be a Kohen himself or somebody who offers a sacrifice and would not be able to eat it while he is a Metzora. So Sforno says that's part of the purification process. That's why it says tahor or toher 3 times. One of them is to indicate this instance of him being allowed to eat holy things. Okay, we're getting to the end here. Got just a few more comments. Chapter 14, verse 36. Now we're going to talk about the tzarat that affects a person's house. So besides it affecting a person's body and the clothes, which is all mentioned in Parsha Tazria. In Parsha Metzora, we have a new kind of tzarat mentioned that has to do with tzarat of the house. Now it's an interesting thing altogether, big discussion amongst the Rishonim and others, is the question of whether tzarat is natural or not. Is it a spiritual affliction with physical signs, or is it just good old-fashioned natural leprosy? Right? So leprosy, by the way, as has been explained to me by a medical expert, is any kind of skin illness. It's not only what we think of leprosy with the skin falling off, etc. The whole body parts being lost. That's not the only kind of leprosy. Really, classically, leprosy affects people in all kinds of different ways. Any kind of real skin issue could be part of leprosy. Like as we've been saying. So Rabbi Yehonatan Eibschutz says that all of the leprosies we've been talking about until now are natural leprosies. Anybody can get them just by being sick, by being exposed, all the other ways you can get an illness. You can also get them through these spiritual problems, through these sins, lashon hara, greed, jealousy, all the other things listed in the Gemara there in Arachim. But this one, where it affects the house, says Rabbi Yehonatan Eibschutz, he writes that this is definitely unnatural. This is not a normal thing to happen. And again, Rav Hirsch seems to say, he actually says about all of it that it's all spiritual. But again, that's not a contradiction. By the way, you can believe that Hashem creates physical manifestations of spiritual punishments. That's good. I mean, it's not good to have punishment. It's good to believe that these things all come from Hashem. Somebody who becomes ill, they should be praying for forgiveness from Hashem. If they don't know why they're ill, so the Gemara in Brachot talks about if you have something happen to you and you don't know why it happened, it's time to reflect. And if you can't think of anything, they say, there's there it gives advice there, step by step, a 12-step program to get rid of illness. And except it's not 12 steps. All right. So in here, chapter 14, verse 36, one of the processes for becoming purified from this tzarat of the house, v'tziva kohen finu et habayit. The kohen shall command to empty out the house, and they do. B'terim mevo hakohen lirot et hanega, and then the kohen goes in after it's cleared out. The kohen goes in to see if it has this nega, if it has this affliction. V'lo yitma, and up until this point, the house was not unclean. Even though, obviously, if it had sarat, and the Kohen has been called to check it out, and he finds it there, obviously there's sarat from before he was called in, right? But it's not considered unclean until the Kohen opens his mouth and says so. Kol asher b'bayit, everything that's inside the house, everything he didn't take out, he was supposed to take everything out. If he didn't take everything out, everything that's in the house is also would also be impure. V'achar ken yavo hakohen lirot et habayit, and that's only then after in order again, you want to take everything out and everything that's and then it remains. So it doesn't become unclean, it doesn't become tameh. When the Kohen comes and sees what's going on in the house, if it's tameh, then the house is tameh and everything that's in it is. Anything that was taken out of it is perfectly safe. That's the idea. That's why you want to empty it out. Before the Kohen would arrive to establish that a house was indeed infected with tzarat, the items inside were taken out so that they would not receive the same designation. This was particularly important for the earthenware dishes, as we've been said before, for they are not able to be used after such a designation, being unable to be koshered. And we talked about this before in terms of koshering, way back in Parsha Shmini. Also, we mentioned it, but that's the idea. So you want, especially your earthenware stuff, to be taken out of the house. Some things can be kosher. So if it's an impure frying pan, you can kosher it. If it's you can take it to the mikvah or whatever. But if it's earthenware, it's for falling. You can't kosher it once it's become impurified. Chapter 14, verse 47. Anybody who stays in the house, they weren't supposed to, but if they did, he has to wash his clothing. Sorry, 1 second. So whoever remains in the house shall wash one's clothes, and whoever not eat the house, eat in the house. Anybody who eats in the house, should also wash the clothing. So Hashem in His Torah indicates the minimum period for remaining in the house to become impure by the comparison to one who, quote, eats in the house. What does that mean? The sages, this is in the Gemara in Negayim 13:9. So the Mishnah, Negayim 13:9. Define this as the time it would take a person to eat half a pras of a loaf of wheat bread with jam or vegetables while sitting comfortably at a table. In other words, not stuffing it into your mouth too quickly. According to the Talmud, probably wondering where, I'm glad you asked, in Eruvin 82b, a whole loaf is not enough food for 2 meals. Accordingly, a half a loaf of a pras is enough for 1 meal. That is the eating mentioned in our verse. For by placing eating together with remaining, we're talking about remaining in the house, eating in the house, Hashem in His Torah indicates that the eating implies a meal and not just a snack. Now, a comfortable bread with jam, with bread, a sandwich, right? Comfortable, not in a hurry, right? That's the amount of time we're talking about. But placing probably by placing remaining together with eating, Hashem and His Torah indicates that this remaining denotes simply staying in the house for the time it takes to eat one meal. Opinions differ as to the prescribed quantity of this eating. It is either a volume of 3 or 4 eggs. There's a whole argument. Rashi, Rambam, Tosfot. It's a big to do in halacha about exactly what the amount of food we're talking about is. If you want to see more about this, see the Beit Yosef on Tur or Chaim 612. All of that is from Rav Samson or Fall Hirsch. Okay, a couple more comments. Chapter 14, verse 51 says part of the ceremony to get rid of this tzarat of the house. לקחת עץ הארז ואת העזו ואת שני תולעת ואת הציפור החיה וטבעו אותם בדם וציפור השחוטה במים החיים היזה el habayit sheva pamim. So just like we had when we were trying to get the person with the tzarat, to get the tzarat off of them, purify them of the tzarat, we sprinkled the Kohen sprinkled on him 7 times. Here we want to get it off a house, so we do the exact same ceremony with the cedar, with the hyssop, the scarlet, the living bird, and we dip them in the blood of the slaughtered bird and in the running water, and then we sprinkle the house now 7 times. So one reason why the Kohen sprinkles blood on the doorway 7 times is because one of the reasons for tzarat is greed, according to the Gemara, again in Arachin 16a. The purification process includes the doorway so that the person realizes that he should have been more welcoming and giving and more considerate of the needs of the people needing hospitality, right? So this is not exactly food related, but it's more like how to be a good host. Look at your guests. Focus on them. Think about them. What do they need? And the sprinkling on the door is like showing this person with tzarat, you were skimpy. You didn't give them enough food. You didn't ask them what they wanted, what they needed. You kicked them out too quickly. They still wanted to sit and relax. All of these things. Your house wasn't used for what it's supposed to be used for the generosity and the giving that a Jewish home is supposed to represent. Finally, last but not least, at the end of Parsha Metzora, we're no longer talking about tzarat. Now we're talking about, in general, some of the laws of nida. Chapter 15, verse 25 says, "V'isha ki yazuv zov dama yamim rabim." The woman has a lot of blood come out, and it's not during her time of being nida. In other words, she's what's called a zava. She has some sort of blood coming out of that region. Then below eti nidata, it's not during the time of her being a nida, or kitazuv, or she has an issue beyond. She's al nidata, beyond her being a nida. So she was a nida for 7 days or whatever, and now she has blood for even longer than that. Kol yemei zov tumuata, kemein nidata tmeyahi. Right, as all the days that this is coming out, it's considered she's as impure as if she were a nida. And just a quick note about that, just related to food, and say, for example, kashrut. A man can trust his wife, who was a nida, that she went to the mikveh without witnesses or any other evidence. Now, ordinarily, just to put this in perspective for a moment, ordinarily, if somebody is, especially with the laws and the very severe punishments that we have regarding nida, that a person is punished with karet for having relations with his wife when she's a nida, she's also eligible for that. You would think there would be bigger safeguards Maybe when she goes to the mikveh, maybe she needs to bring along two witnesses who say that she went to the mikveh. For example, a woman who goes, or a man who goes to the mikveh to convert to Judaism, there are witnesses to this. Oh, there's cheesecloth, there's some tzniut, safeguards, etc. But maybe a woman, every time she goes to the mikveh, also needs that. The answer is no. We actually the exact opposite. We don't want any witnesses. The man has to trust his wife that she went to the mikveh, even without witnesses or without any other evidence, although she is only one person. And usually one person's testimony doesn't really count for much. But this, by the way, halachically, I forget what the source for this, I'll have to look it up later, but this is one of the sources, I believe it's Reb Moshe, but I'm not sure. One of the sources that we have for trusting one mashgiach. Right? You might think maybe you need witnesses. Kashrut is an important thing also. In a restaurant, how do you know you're trusting one person that all the food that's coming out of that kitchen is kosher? Maybe you should have two people. Maybe you should have witnesses. They should. Maybe you should have a whole court session every day where these mashgichim are brought to testify about the food. No, we don't do that. We can trust one person, and in fact, it's a very good thing. Because forget about a restaurant, because restaurants are relatively new idea in the last 150 years or so, whatever it is. But until then, or for most of us, the food that comes out of our kitchen is only being really witnessed by one person. And that one person is trusted without any kind of cameras and hashgachas and testimony and witnesses, any of that. So that all comes from this idea that a man can trust his wife, even though she's alone, or that she went to the mikveh, and that's evidence enough. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, I think we saw that Parsha Tazria and Metzora, both these parshiot, have quite a few lessons for us for how we should behave and how we should understand the world of food and nutrition and hospitality. And I hope you enjoyed. And for more, come visit next week, where we get into Parshot Achari Mot and Kedoshim, and we'll see there's quite a bit to say there as well about keeping holy in the process of eating and relating our lives to food. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your week, and a Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov.